Hello, and welcome to another broadcast of Comics Let's Talk. Karl Vincent, Vampire Hunter, my own creation. I want to talk about the origins of Karl Vincent and then talk about a character in the film and an article that I called I Picked the Right Time to Pull Out My Johnson. On the website Comics for Sinners, I review comic books. You can check that out online. Comics for Sinners. The column is called Given to Me. But first, let's talk about the origins of Karl Vincent. Where did I come up with this idea? I'm going to give you my influences, which a lot of writers don't do. Most writers want you to think they came up with everything purely on their own. But of course, we all know that all writers have influences. There are no new stories, only new ways to tell the same story. That's one thing that all you aspiring writers have to remember. And now let's get to it. First, a little background on myself. I was born in a small town in Maine, which incidentally is the same state as Stephen King, another writer of horror who is a heck of a lot more popular than I am. I guarantee that. I hope to change that though, but maybe I will, maybe I won't. Anyway, he lives in Bangor, Maine. I'm from a little town called Holton. I went to the University of Maine as a speech communications major and also attended the New England School of Communications and studied writing with the Long Ridge Writers Group as well as Writers Boot Camp, where they taught me how to write scripts. That was in Los Angeles. Long Ridge Writers Group, if you're interested, you can find them online, and they are out of Connecticut. If you're an aspiring writer, I highly recommend their course. They taught me how to structure stories, character development, and a lot of other great stuff that you would need to learn as a writer if you ever decide to write. Now, when I was a young boy, I created my own comic book universe. I was drawing. Some of it looked okay, most of it looked like crap. But I was 12 years old, created characters like the Crimson Crusher, which is my universe's answer to the Hulk. Now, the interesting thing about Crimson Crusher, I made him red. And years later, I heard Kenneth Johnson, who produced the Incredible Hulk television series, that he wanted to make the Hulk red. Then I came up with a character called Powerhouse, which was my universe's answer to Superman. And I've always wanted to write both novels and comic books. With Karl Vincent, I was watching an old Don Knotts movie called The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, and the thought came to mind, what if Don Knotts were a vampire hunter? In a flash, I committed this idea to paper and developed the character to look like myself. Other influences included the old Night Stalker TV series with Darren McGavin, and it's a TV series that also influenced the X-Files on Fox. I was also influenced by movies like Fright Night with Roddy McDowall and William Ragsdale. Also Lost Boys with Kiefer Sutherland in what my opinion is his best role ever, playing David the Vampire in Lost Boys. So that's another influence I had. And Karl Vincent is kind of a reluctant vampire hunter detective that became convinced of the reality of Nosferatu. When he decided to hunt these sinister creatures of the night, eventually he lost everything. His job, his family, his self-respect. And his wife Barbara thinks he's crazy and wants a divorce. His oldest son, Keith, won't talk to him at all anymore since he announced to Keith's class on career day that he was going to quit his job to hunt vampires. And my first novel is Last Rites, The Return of Sebastian Bacillus. You can find it on Amazon. And it's also been turned into a comic book. You can find Karl Vincent comic books on Indie Planet as well as Drive-Thru Comics. Karl's arch nemesis is a vampire named Sebastian Bacillus. Now, we are producing a movie at this time. Here are some production pictures from the movie. The actor Louis Antonio Howard is playing Sebastian Bacillus. Now, Sebastian is actually Radu Selfrumos, the brother of Vlad Tepes, who is Dracula. In Last Rites, Sebastian is already dead. I want to explain when I was going to write the movie. I wrote a short story about how Karl tracked down and hunted his arch nemesis, who is Sebastian Bacillus, to an old potato barn in Island Falls, Maine. I'm from Holton, but Holton doesn't have any kind of a horror feel to it. So I set it in a town nearby called Island Falls. To me, it's a perfect name for a horror setting. I tried to flesh that out into a script. This is before I studied with Writers Boot Camp that helped me to write scripts, and it just wasn't long enough to flesh out into a 2-hour story. So I brainstormed. I went to a little seminar with famous director Akira Kurosawa, one of my favorite directors, and we watched a few of his films and we had discussions. I realized, there's been a ton of movies using the formula that he used to create Seven Samurai, including the American Western remake, The Magnificent Seven. I mean, other movies included Star Wars, of all things, Battle Beyond the Stars, A Bug's Life, Force 10 from Navarone, A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The list goes on and on. It seems like every other year there's a movie that used the basic formula that Akira Kurosawa used to create Seven Samurai. And I was sitting in the audience and listening to them talk about the other films that were influenced by his work, and it came to me, there's never been a horror or a horror comedy, at least not to the best of my knowledge. If any of you on YouTube know of any, please comment in the comment section below and let me know. There's never been, to the best of my knowledge, a horror or a horror comedy that used the formula for the Magnificent Seven. So I thought, Karl has to recruit his own Magnificent Seven to take down a vampire threat. I brainstormed. I was out there, I was going to study screenwriting with the Writers Boot Camp, but I hadn't yet started. So I went out and I bought Seven Samurai and the Magnificent Seven movies, and I sat there and I outlined both movies. And I used those outlines to outline my story, Last Rites, The Return of Sebastian Basilis. As I said earlier, I wrote a short story where Karl tracks down and hunts and kills his arch nemesis, Sebastian Basilis. So Sebastian, at the beginning of this story, comes back as a ghost, and he tells Karl that he's going to recruit him to take on the most dangerous vampires known to mankind. They have to prevent the resurrection of Lilith, the Hebrew vampire, Sekhmet, the Egyptian vampire, and Kali, the Hindu vampire. Lilith, by the time Sebastian shows up in Karl's room, has already been resurrected. Karl's reluctant. Every time he sees a vampire, will wet his pants. He says, "Are you kidding me? I can't take on thousands of these vampires by myself. I can barely take on one that's asleep in the coffin already." And he says no. But Sebastian persists, and we'll discuss later how he finally convinces Karl to go along on this mission. And he assures him that he's not going to be the only vampire hunter. Enter my Magnificent Seven. Sebastian leads Karl to Lyndon Johnson, former president, was turned into a vampire. I read the obituary of Lyndon Johnson, and I worked my vampire, who happened to be a Vietnam vet named Johnny Carradine, into the obituary, and instead of dying in my reality, Lyndon Johnson was bit that night, and the whole origin is found on Indie Planet in Files of Karl Vincent #1, artist Joe Batten. So you can read how Karl became a vampire hunter. I'm not going to discuss it all here. But anyway, the first recruit that Sebastian brings Karl to is President Lyndon Johnson, now a vampire himself. But he doesn't like being a vampire. So he willingly goes with Karl on this mission because he hates what he is, he hates what he became. Now let me read my column. We'll discuss that on a later broadcast. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Once again, check them out. You can look inside the books, Amazon, Drive-Thru Comics, and Indie Planet all allow you to look inside the books. So check them out. Let me know what you think in the comments section below, and I'll keep you up to date on what's happening with the comic books. We're adapting Foul Blood right now, as well as Dracula Rising, which is a sequel to Last Rites. So check it all out. Let me know what you think. That's our next broadcast on Comics. Let's talk. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day.